Here I'm replacing the kiln elements on the bottom ring on my Paragon 273. I'm poking it through the inside wall, the start where the hole is, and then I go around to the outside in the control box and make sure it goes through the insulator there, and that the insulator is fully going through so there's no contact of the metal to the outside metal of the kiln. The way the Paragon elements are is they have a little bend in them, and it's predetermined, and if you don't get it pushed back into the recess of each corner as you go around, your length won't work out in the end. So I'm using a pair of needle nose pliers just to save my knuckles and cuticles on my hands from hurting from shoving that in the kiln brick. I knew it was time to replace my elements. One, because this kiln I purchased used, and I replaced the middle two elements when I received it after I checked the ohms meter, and it meant that they needed to be replaced. And I started to get fired too long and failed to heat error messages, and my kiln log prior to that was slowly increasing the amount of time it was taking to get to either the cone 04 or the cone 6 that I typically fire to. So my daughter's helping me here, replacing the elements in this 273 Paragon, my 243 Paragon, or the kiln sitter model of gear that I had before is exactly the same. If you stay to the end, you can see where I disconnect the top set of elements that I'm replacing from the outside and pull them out if you're unsure on how to do that part. But it's just making sure they're tucked in. We're going to ignore the sagging element in the middle where there's some kiln brick missing. Like I said, this kiln was originally in a paint your own pottery studio, and it was used and abused, but it was the perfect used price and has done well for me for the last 2 or so years. So, as always, having someone younger to help you is always beneficial. Making sure to tuck those back in. I save the bits that I cut off of the part that pokes through the wall of the kiln to the outside that I cut off there, so that if I need bead wire to hang beads on, I know that that can handle my kiln temperature. I also have staples for holding in the elements on areas where there's kiln brick missing, and that I recommend. So you should have a troubleshooting guide for yourself, and you also should have a cat supervising you at all times. Mm-hmm. So here I am on the outside. I'm replacing the connector that goes to the control panel to the relay and that attaches to the outside of the element. They came with my Paragon elements when I ordered them. I also keep a bowl of all those like little connectors and extra bits and pieces because you never know when you need it. So here I'm securing the relay wire on, and then I'm securing the connecting it to the outside of the element down by the insulator, and then just going to tighten it on and make sure I have a really good connection. You don't want that to come loose because then your element will not click on and you'll have a heating problem in your kiln because you'll be one element totally down, not just a little down. And then you're going to carefully cut off that extended piece. And like I said before, I keep those because I'm like a pack rat and cannot get rid of anything, or because they can be useful later. Anyhow, so I make sure that I do the same to the other side. Try to keep the cat out of the control panel if you can. And it goes the one to the relay. I like to just do one set of elements at a time. Like I said, I've done the middle two on this kiln some time ago, and I'll mark in my kiln log today's date and that I did that. if I like to change them one at a time because I don't want to forget which relay goes to which and have to reread the wire diagram. It's not difficult to do. It's just easier to have it done that way. So my big hands fumble around a little bit and I kind of sort that out. If I were to buy a brand new kiln, I think I would probably go with an L&L, so I would have less kiln brick damage when replacing the elements, especially that I do all of my own kiln repair myself. The only thing I didn't do is the direct wiring and running the 220 line because that exceeds my skill set. But I rewired my entire internal components in my kiln, replaced numerous thermocouplers and elements, and it's a good skill to have as a potter. So here we are, we're getting ready to take the relay wires off here at the connectors, the front insulator behind the control panel box and for the top ring. So I did check my ohms meter to make sure that the resistance in these elements was indeed what was causing my failure to heat and fire too long error messages on the kiln. So I didn't just jump to replace the elements. Now in here, I'm using a pair of needle nose pliers at the entrance or exit, depending on how you see it. And I start working the kiln elements out kind of with a wiggle and not being terribly overly aggressive, but you can see where there was previous kiln brick damage, soft brick damage, like it's flaked out a little. You know, now the bottom ring of elements, I will say, had a glaze bit that burnt through an element entirely, and it was broken there. You should wear a mask when sweeping up that area. This is a dustpan and broom that I have just for the kilns. Normally I would put my respirator on to do that. Most manufacturers recommend that you put a piece of newspaper down at the bottom of your kiln to keep kiln wash from getting in contact with your elements. I don't have kiln wash at the very base of my kiln, so I didn't put a piece of newspaper there. I also tend not to keep paper at all anywhere near where my kilns are. I'm always afraid that they're gonna blow near the kilns when they're firing or what have you. So I'm really vigilant about that, or try to be. So just like I did the first time, is I poke it through the wall, making sure that it goes through the insulator, and I'll show that later, and tucking each corner in very well, using the needle nose pliers as needed to save your knuckles and your cuticles, working your way around the kiln entirely. And then oh, don't forget, love the cat, that's my daughter's foot. So I'm making sure when I put the insulator on that the insulator is going all the way through, that it's not there's not like a gap between the kiln wall, the metal kiln wall, and the insulator, so that there's not a chance that I can electrify the exterior of my kiln, because that would suck. Anyhow, so now I'm doing the same thing I did to the bottom kiln elements, where I'm connecting the relay switch, or not relay switch, but the relay connector to the outside, tightening it, and then securing it to the element wire. And going to just go ahead and snip that off, hoard that little piece, and do the same on the other end of the elements. It feels like it went faster. The more you do it, the more secure you get in doing it, and the faster it seems to go. Some elements, like for the Paragon, like I said, the middle elements are different resistance than the top and the bottom. So make sure when you're measuring your ohms that you're following the specifications of your kiln. You can call. Most of the kiln manufacturers are really fantastic in helping you and troubleshooting on the phones, so you can figure out what your resistance should be. Don't always jump to the conclusion that it's the elements. It can be a plethora of things in both the manual kilns and these control box kilns. So snip that off, and then there's like a little protective sleeve that goes over. All you do, put that there. Mine has 4 screws that go up and down the side, and has a little piece of insulation to keep the computer. Make sure that your cat is supervising you the entire time. Felines are very versed in how to replace elements, how to fire kilns, and pottery in general. I find most potters have some sort of pet, but have a great day.